Welcome to the Deep Dive on Hoop City with Paul Sir. I am pleased to be joined by two gentlemen that are hanging out at the FIBA 3x3 World Cup in Warsaw, Poland. Steve Sir, Steve, of course, from Edmonton, a longtime top Canadian 3x3 player, now the head coach of the men's and women's national teams in Mongolia. And then his Edmonton associate who is over there helping take care of the teams and their physical therapy needs, their injury recovery, et cetera, is Craig Wilson, one of the owners of the outstanding Pivotal Physiotherapy Clinic network around Edmonton. And they're joining us today from Warsaw. Thanks, guys, for being willing to find some time in a busy schedule to hop on.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, let's start with the World Cup in Warsaw, Poland. The World Cup, of course, is a big deal. Last year it was held in Ulaanbaatar, the capital of Mongolia. The Mongolian women shocked the world with a silver medal that was just unthinkable, 15 minutes before the event started, much less years before. But that vision of improvement came to fruition, and the country accomplished something really, really special. But, Steve, when you win something like that, you don't sneak up on people anymore. And everybody, you now have a target on your back. What's it been like for the women's team? Let's start with them as they went into this year's World Cup.
It's been exactly that. It's a real shift in role for our girls because they've never been in a position where they are the team that is targeted and not the team that is underdog trying to scrap and make a name for themselves or leave a good impression. It's great development for our girls to now have a chance to be a team that when we're on the schedule, somebody's circling either as we have to make sure we take them seriously, or say in the case of the States, they're circling it as we need to get them back for what happened last year. Overall, I think that, the feeling on the team was a positive one heading into World Cup. There were a few nerves, obviously, coming off of what was an unprecedented result for us just a year ago. But what our message was to the girls was, whatever happens this year doesn't change what happened last year. When teams are being introduced at the World Cup this year, they run through what these countries have accomplished in the world of 3x3 on a national team level. And one of the things that they mentioned is in 2025, Mongolia was the runner-up silver medalist of the 2025 World Cup. They don't say where that game or where that cup was. They just say that you're a medalist. So I have to make sure the girls understand you finished second at the World Cup, yes, at home, but that's going to be the lasting accomplishment here is that we were runners-up. It had nothing to do with, outside factors because, hey, here this year, the Poland men and the Polish women are hosting and both are out in pool play. So you can host, but it's another thing to host and actually win. So, for our girls, there was, I would say, probably a little bit of pressure coming in of feeling like, are we going to be able to finish second? If we don't, how's that going to feel or how's that going to look to everybody else? But I think we settled into a good place of we're going to compete, we're going to fight, we're going to continue to improve. And we're going to show the competition and the World Cup field that we're getting better year by year, and our competition level is going to continue to rise.
The men isn't the men's team that you brought is an interesting case in point because you didn't bring the usual suspects on your men's national team. You brought really three of four that were first timers in an event like this. And talk about the strategy behind this. But you were before you go there, you were in a pool, kind of a pool of death scenario where every team in your pool was a high-level accomplished team. And yet this group, 3 of 4, like I mentioned, who are first-timers, had the Americans down 19-16. And the Americans are one of the heavy favorites, one of the 2 or 3 favorites in this event. Talk about what this means in terms of your program development, because this is the long game that you're playing, isn't it, Steve?
We wanted guys to gain experience this year for 3 of our 4, as you mentioned. This was their first World Cup. their first time representing Mongolia on the senior level at an event in 3x3. So the ultimate goal and the ultimate hope was that there was going to be a lot of learning and a lot of on-the-job learning. We had a little bit of a slow start against Czech Republic. Czech Republic turned out to show that they were ready to play when they got here. They beat us. They beat the Americans. Them getting out of pool play was unexpected, but they earned it. After we had that, we had a good comeback where we were playing Poland in their opening game for World Cup. So the arena was full. It was packed. There was great energy. And to give our guys credit, they refocused after I yelled at them a little bit. And then they won against the home team in a really physical, really demanding game. So that was a great character building experience for the guys of being in that environment, being able to stick together and being able to close that game out. As you said, with the Americans, we had them down 19-16 with the ball, played a very good game, played our pace, had a really good look, and it didn't go down. And 3x3 is a wild sport. 19-16 sounds like you're just about home free, and then all of a sudden someone hits a shot, hits another shot, and you go like, how are we losing? So same type of thing. Guys got a chance to see the level. They got a chance to see that the caliber of athletes, the caliber of team, how hard they play, the amount of preparation that goes into these kind of games. And then also they got the chance to see with these games, you've done everything right. And then there's those last 2 meters that you got to sprint, and it can change drastically in the blink of an eye. So this is part of the experience for them, is playing, competing, putting yourself in a position to win. That was our whole thing, is let's be at the end of the game in a position to win. And the last little step is closing it out. And that's the kind of experience in 3x3 that you only learn when you're in those situations. So I think we leave here feeling optimistic. We had a big team meeting yesterday talking about exactly that. What are our next steps? How do we want to take what we learned here and help us grow as players in the program? And I think we're all optimistic that the players will channel this the right way and take it back to Mongolia with some next steps to help us continue to get better.
We're on the deep dive on Hoop City with Paul Sir. I'm joined by Steve Sir and Craig Wilson. And Craig, I'd like to bring you in here because I think people would say, well, this is interesting. We've got all this these Edmonton folks helping out over in Mongolia. But I think it's safe to say what's been created and is in the process of being created is a completely new basketball culture. And along with what you do on the court, it's what you do off the court that's critical for teams to get better. And that's where you come in. Talk about what your role is when you join up with Mongolia. Obviously, you're not there full time. You've got about 27 locations you got to run here back in Edmonton. And a lot, you're juggling chainsaws on a unicycle all the time. But, you're a really critical factor in this. So talk about what it's like to work with a national team program at the stage that it's at.
Paul, thanks for having me on the show. It's been a really wonderful experience to work with their national team and a bit with their World Tour team as well. My introduction to the sport came through Steve in 2018, 2019, watching him play and assisting him when he was in Edmonton. So I got to learn about the game, its nuances, its intensity, its preparedness. It's an interesting sport where you need to hit the ground running and not be flat, not slow out of the gate. So from a clinical point of view or performance point of view, it has some interesting problems to solve. Teams are traveling far distances. They're often not over their jet lag when they are actually entering competition. So from my perspective, it's been great to learn some of the tools and some of the tricks that get players ready to go on game day and how we look after them in between games, what they need to do to get their body right after they play. What do they need to do the morning of the game? How do they warm up? All of those factors have a big influence on how they perform, because when we're thinking about performance in this case, we're looking at about a 15-minute sample size of athleticism, and you need to get that right. And if you can try to make them level and do everything you can do to get them to perform well. You've done your job. But in this world, it's really important that everybody is fresh right when the whistle goes.
How do you do that? What give us a kind of a quick overview of what that means on game day, Craig?
Yeah, I mean, I think game day is, you're thinking about what are you doing a little bit before game day, if we can back it up.
Yes.
As you mentioned, I get to join the team in different places in the world. So, often there's a survey of how every athlete is coming into the event. They're balancing sometimes another 3x3 event that they're coming from. Sometimes they're just done playing 5-on-5 basketball. So you're usually looking at some sort of injury history or performance history. Nobody's as fresh as a daisy when they get off the plane. So you're trying to survey the lay of the land and figure out what each athlete needs to get them, ready before game day. But getting ready for game day starts the night before. You try to get them, in bed early. You try to get them up at a reasonable time. Even if you're playing late, you don't want to have athletes sleeping late into the morning and not getting their head in the game and their bodies ready to perform. So thinking, what are you eating in the morning? How are we hydrating? What does our activation look like that day? Working with Toshia has been wonderful. He's the strength coach for the national teams in Mongolia. He's got it really dialed in with those athletes as well. He spends his time in Mongolia, so he gets lots of eyes and opportunities to be with them on a daily basis. So making sure, like as a team, checking with Steve on what he's seeing with athletes, checking with Coach Toshia to see what his perspectives are, and adding my voice to that conversation of three to try to make sure we have all the angles covered, and doing a little bit of extra work here and there when we see something doesn't quite feel right.
It's a great overview. It's interesting. This, as we talked this morning, what really stands out to me is, and I think what it's important to appreciate is that the difference between what, let's say, the Americans are doing with their program, which, this long established global leading basketball culture, and you're trying to fit 3x3 into the basketball ecosystem and pick players and build an organization, is completely different than planting a mustard seed, which is exactly what you've done. Is you've taken a nation in one of the most remote locations in the world, 3.5 million people in a large geographic landmass, that has no basketball history. And now you're creating this, and that requires vision. It requires so many elemental efforts and aspects. But Steve, is there an advantage to that in some respects? Like, because you're breaking old habits, because what you don't know, you don't know. But is there something of an advantage in trying to create that culture, or is it mostly just trying to herd cats uphill?
That's a good question. There are times where I think it could be an advantage because you're trying to possibly do something for the first time. And even if it isn't perfect, it might be rooted in the right philosophy. I wouldn't want to trash talk all past things that were done out there, but it's a very very early viewpoint of basketball for certain parts of Mongolia when you get to a certain time period. In the last 3 or 4 years in particular, everything has seemed to accelerate and be built around the efforts that are also being made by leadership to upgrade facilities, bring in different voices or new voices rather, upgrade strength and conditioning, upgrade the areas that are going to help athletes off, not just on the court, but off. And that was a tough nut to crack when I first got out there, because as you mentioned, you don't know what you don't know. And even though you don't have a rich basketball history, there's always still something you can point to that says, well, we were successful doing this and these were the circumstances. So if it worked once, then why can't it work again? And I could see to a point why someone would believe that, but then you would also get into that area of, well, whatever we're doing and getting better, you have to also remember that everybody else is trying to progress and get better as well. And we're talking about countries that have stronger basketball histories. We are talking about countries that possibly have more resources, and we are talking about countries also too that have a lot more players to choose from. One of the interesting challenges with Mongolia, as you mentioned, is there's not a ton of people there, and we don't have a deep talent pool to pull from. That said, though, one of the things that has really grabbed our program and lifted it up is we have, on the women's side in particular, two athletes that are very determined in being successful in Hulana Novotar and then Aruka Aryan Sensei. They have played off each other in this. They push each other. If it wasn't for them believing the way that they believed, and it wasn't for how hard that they've worked over these last few years, I think we'd still be okay, but we wouldn't be in the position we were in. So I know the work and the effort that I've done, but also too having willing players that are buying into these things, that are trying to push themselves, that are trying to go the extra mile on getting extra shots up and get better as a player. That's ultimately, I think, what's going to drive the program forward. So we may not have a ton of players, but we do have some great personalities, and we do have some great camaraderie that comes from the players that we do have. And I wouldn't trade that for anybody, because it's very unique to what Mongolia is as a country and how our athletic experience is. We're tough, we're hard-nosed, we're a little slept on. You can play off that. And as I mentioned before, World Cup, it switched a little bit. Where now there's some expectations, but we didn't do great as far as just straight wins go. We played well, but we didn't get the wins possibly to show just how well we were in those games. So you're right back to that underdog role. And I think, we're moving the chains, and we have the right players to do that. And that's, I think, what we have to continue to believe in is that we're heading in the right direction, and we're building towards what we ultimately want to achieve with the players that we want to achieve it with.
You're on the deep dive with Paul on Hoop City with Paul Sir. I'm joined by Steve Sir and Craig Wilson, and they're Edmontonians who Steve is living and working as the national team head coach of the men and women's program, as well as the World Tour and Women's Series touring teams, and much, much else. And Craig Wilson is one of the owners of the marvelous Pivotal Physiotherapy group of facilities in Edmonton. Craig, I'm going to go to you because you've been affiliated with this program now for a few years, and you go to various events. So you're at this year's World Cup. What do you see in terms of the level of play, let's say today, if you can compare it to a couple of years ago, as it solidifies itself, and by it I mean 3x3, as an Olympic sport? What are you seeing on court? Are you seeing a noticeable improvement, a dramatic improvement in terms of quality of play and numbers of teams, or is it kind of the same and just incrementally getting slightly better?
Thanks, Paul. From my perspective, and I'm not necessarily a basketball guru like you and Steve, but I think when I look through the 20 teams on the men's and women's side this year, I think you look at those teams and you look at threats, you look at the opportunities that each country brings. And I think that the field is more balanced. And you have kind of underdog teams that perform well in this event. And I think the consistency of play is better. I think the quality of the athletes has improved. Looking at, teams this year, Madagascar are coming out of pool play, having a really wonderful event. Maybe this year's Cinderella team. Looking at some of the European teams that did really well in the previous years that didn't get as far, that didn't make it out of pool play this year. So I don't think there's, the traditional lock. If you like, what are the top three teams? I don't think you could survey 100 people and probably not get the consistency in that answer. And I think it's a really difficult sport to really identify somebody that's going to, win these events consistently year over year. You can always put an asterisk beside the Serbian men's program, which is, does a lot of things right and does a lot of things consistently. and they're always a force to be reckoned with. But I think the rest of the field is catching up, and games are exciting, and we see far fewer blowouts in the last few events that I've been at.
That's a great observation, and I think very well stated. Steve, you talk about youth inexperience and having to raise the bar. Last night, it really transcends into all aspects of basketball. Last night, the San Antonio Spurs lost 105-104 to the Knicks. Amazing game to watch. Everybody, of course, understandably so, is enthralled completely with Victor Wembanyama. He had a marvelous game last night, but with time running down, Wemby gets a rebound, makes a pass similar to the gentleman from Georgetown against North Carolina when he made the pass to James Worthy and he went in for the dunk. Wemby did the same thing. Then Wemby had a nice 15-footer, pretty good look at the end to win it. Didn't win it. Knicks go back to New York up 2-0. It really is demonstrative, though, in the end, 3x3, 5-on-5 is basketball, and experience counts. Jalen Brunson last night was 7 for 25, but he hit the clutch shot. So it's not the percentage, it's not only the percentage, it's so many other things. That's what you're experiencing right now. And there's no, you still have to climb the ladder, don't you? And it's one step at a time. And a lot of times it's 2 rungs up, 3 rungs down as you're climbing that ladder. When you're trying to build a program, you're trying to build from the inside out as well as what you do on the court. So talk about what the schedule looks like now for your teams coming up and what your goals are for this now World Tour and Women's Series season.
Well, we really move right into it. There's not a lot of time to bask in the 14th place finish that we got. So it's we're gonna move right on. Our girls have the Vienna Women's Series next week, so we go straight from here to Vienna. We have a few good days of practice, which will be good for us to reset and get back into Pro Tour mode. We'll play in Vienna, and then we'll head back to Ulaanbaatar, and we have a week and a half, and then we're hosting our big beginning of the summer basketball week in Ulaanbaatar, where we have the Sukhpatar Challenger, followed by the Ulaanbaatar Women's Series, followed by the Ulaanbaatar World Tour, all in 1 week. So we'll have that all happen in a 6-day span, and then for there we're right into playing too. So our men will be busy with that. Our girls will be playing. Our girls right after that go to China and play in a women's series. Our guys will possibly head to Europe and play in Spain. Girls will come back. We'll have another stop in China. Then the girls will go to Indonesia. Our guys will play a few tournaments. So this is going to be the way that it's going to be through September for our girls, hopefully pushing towards the final, which is a really tough final to make. But we're off to a good start there before we had a break for World Cup. And how we want to take, what we did here. We were talking about it yesterday, and it's important to mention from one year to the next. The 2025 gold medalists on the men's side didn't make it out of pool play. Spain didn't make it out of pool play, and they had a really good team. Switzerland, who was the silver medalist last year on the men's side, didn't have a team at World Cup because they didn't qualify. The silver medalist on the women's side and the bronze medalist on the women's side, Mongolia and Canada, didn't get out of pool play. So 3x3 is an unkind sport. You would think that all the medalists from last year are going to cruise right into the knockout rounds and be right there. It isn't to say that those teams played bad. It's just that, like Craig mentioned, the level of competition continues to rise every year. And I think the fear of going up against what have been traditional powers in here is starting to go down as well. Countries are coming with better players, better game plans, more support staff. I mean, having Craig here has been a game changer for our program, of him being able to assess the players, to treat the players, to stay on top of that, to prepare them for the next games. As he mentioned before, our strength and conditioning coach, Toshida from Japan, has been a game changer for us. We have our early morning lifts now, and we have our mobility and recovery sessions that he leads. having these key pieces in place are the real building blocks for having a legitimate program that has a chance to compete at every tournament that we're at. You're seeing that in other programs too. I mean, always in basketball, but definitely in 3x3 because it's such a young sport. It's a big borrow and steal sport. You're going to see what's working with other people. You're going to see what strategies. I'm sure there's somebody that ran a play here that everyone's going to obsess over for a week, and you're going to go to Vienna and 5 teams are going to be running that play because it's just the best play of the week. And that might change in a month. So as we mentioned before, we had a meeting with our team. We wanted to really delve into what it means to set goals based on what we experienced here and how we're going to go back to Ulaanbaatar. It's not going to burn as bad as it did while we were here after losing. And you got to remember that burn. You got to write stuff down. You got to be in the gym and be consistent, hold yourself accountable. As you mentioned before, this is a young sports culture. So this is sort of stuff that they might have heard before, but if it gets insisted upon is going to be new for them. And that's what this World Cup will ultimately serve on our men's side and also on our women's side as well. We had 2 new women's players with us at this World Cup, and this is valuable experience for them. One of our women that's new to our roster is 24 and the other's 20. So they're really young. They had a list come out for ages at the World Cup. New Zealand on the men's side was the youngest team. We were the second youngest team. And on the women's side, it was similar. We were the second youngest women's team. Bodes well for the future. But it also means that there are classes in session for a couple of these games. So it's all positive stuff. The season's going to be wild. There's going to be a ton of chances to play in if you're a player, especially a young player. Like, what's better than that? Than a full calendar where you're going to get to travel and play with people you care about and have a chance to represent your country. It's going to be exciting moving forward.
You guys have done a remarkable job of sharing not just what's going on in Mongolia, but what the 3x3 sport is all about. And I think that's one of the things that it's like a gladiator match, isn't it? Where you don't have much time to get out there. You're gonna live or die based on a very short period of time because everybody's coming with their weaponry ready to go. So you have to be ready. You have to be ready as well. Steve, thanks so much. Craig, real pleasure to have you both on. Enjoy the quarterfinals, semis, and finals that are going to be starting shortly over in Warsaw, and best of luck on your upcoming tour. And Craig, will look forward to your getting back to Edmonton soon as well.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks for having us.
It was great. Steve Sir, Craig Wilson over in Warsaw, Poland at the World Cup for FIBA 3x3, joining me on the deep dive on Hoop City with Paul Sir. We're back live again. Great interview with both Steve and Craig. As you can hear, they're very thoughtful, well-spoken individuals who are, deeply immersed in what they're doing and the contributions they're making to the programs and to the athletes that they're dealing with, certainly. And 3x3, as anybody that knows me and has even indicated on the shirt that I wear, is a passion of mine. Has been really my entire life. My high school coach, Daryl Collins, along with Jerry Ahrens, are still dear friends of mine and have been massive influences in my life. And I am grateful every day for having had the opportunity to play for them through my formative high school career. But Daryl, my head coach, started a 3-on-3 summer league in 1971. And of course, that dates me and I don't care. But in 1971, I played in my first 3-on-3 tournament or league and fell in love with it. And then my now passed, but heavily influential coach, friend, and mentor, Les Whitkey at Winona State University, also ran a spring 3x3 or 3-on-3 league rather, that then I took over and ran at Winona State in future years after that, after my sophomore year in college. Been in love with 3-on-3 my whole life. Every coach that's ever coached the game, every player that's ever played the game knows that that's part of practice, also fun to pick up with friends. And when 3x3 became its own sport back in 2010, I tried to be a driving force, and I think very successfully, through Alberta basketball and the tournament that we ran, but then also the introduction of the 3x3 FIBA events that we ran, starting at West Edmonton Mall in 2018 and continuing up through this year. This year, we're not going to have a 3x3 event for a variety of reasons. And while that is unfortunate on one level, what we are is not walking away from, but we're retooling and putting together a 3-year strategy that will take us through the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles. And that's going to be announced shortly. But what I can announce right now is that we will be having a 3x3 event called Hoop City 3x3 EFCL Basketball Festival. And EFCL is the Edmonton Federation of Community Leagues, which I am so grateful for the community league program that we have here in Edmonton. It's extremely special. And I think that 3x3 has a real place as part of the community league programming that will be going on. So on July 10th and 11th, down at the Fan Park, we are going to be running a FIBA 3x3 EFCL basketball festival. We'll have basketball. We're going to be announcing this formally next week with press releases and social media, so pay attention for detail. There will not be a barrier to entry for fees. That's only going to be $75 per team. You're going to be guaranteed 4 games, and we're going to have a lot of fun, and I'm really grateful for not just the great people at the Edmonton Federation of Community Leagues, but also the Oilers Entertainment Group, the Oilers Foundation, Sport Edmonton, City of Edmonton, of course, and all of our great partners in the community as we bring 3x3 outside and downtown for an exciting event this year. And then we're also going to be running 4 activations during the summer weeks ahead at Eau-des-Mines Park, the new beautiful park at 101st Avenue and 107th Street. And we'll be announcing those next week as well. There are going to be 4 opportunities for 3x3 players to come down and be part of this event. No charge, just part of a summer of fun in downtown Edmonton, working closely with the Downtown Business Association, and we're going to be running some great fun programs as well. We're going to take a break right now, and when we come back, Josh and I are going to get back to the NBA and talk a little bit more about what we can expect coming up in Game 3. We'll also touch on the Edmonton Stingers, talk a little bit of WNBA as we wrap up this week's rendition of Hoop City with Paul Sir. Thank you for being with us today, and we'll be right back after these messages. Hoop City, we're driving down the final stretch here. As you may have noticed in my playlist for today, everything has to do with the weather. We had so much rain this past week. At first, I thought it was going to be a rainy day today, so I had selected just all titles with rain in the title, but then there was this beautiful sunshine this morning. So called an audible and tried to get sunshine back into a couple of the titles and some great songs that we've been able to share with you today. You know, Josh, I have a question for you regarding the upcoming Game 3.
Mm-hmm.
Which 2 San Antonio Spurs need to be much better than they have been in order for the Spurs to take Game 3, which, as you, I think, correctly indicated, is a must-win for San Antonio to have any hope or shot, because of history, because of reality, to be able to come back and contend for this series? Which 2 Spurs would you choose?
Yeah, wow, that's a tough one. I'll say Steph Castle. He needs to stop fouling. He needs to just focus on your game. Nothing else is going to go wrong. Just focus on your game. But stop fouling, for the love of all things good and holy. And then first half, Wemby, he had 4 shots in the first half yesterday. That is not enough. You need to do more early. Get into your groove early, because everyone else's groove will come. But if you can get going, the defense will focus on you more, and that will open up the floor for guys like Devin Vassell, Steph Castle, Dylan Harper, De'Aaron Fox. Those guys' games will be able to come. And maybe Keldon Johnson will get in the game more. I'd like to see him deployed more. That's on Mitch Johnson, though, and not KJ.
Yeah, I'd like to see Keldon Johnson be more of a contributor, but like I said, I think he's had the reins pulled back. And it's very typical in playoff basketball that you shorten your bench. but it's surprising to see the Spurs coaching staff shorten the bench by keeping the sixth man of the year on the bench as much as they have, as opposed to letting him get in there, because he's like a Josh Hart who can shoot. And he really can be a difference maker against a very physical New York Knicks team. So I think it is really important that Keldon Johnson is more of an impact. And I also think that we need Wemby just has to step up, and Wemby has to stop. It's going to be interesting to see how Wemby approaches the next game. He's a highly emotional guy, as we've seen many, many times. And that's great to a point. But then where he was at his best was in the fourth quarter in non-emotional plays where he was more under control and not trying to do too much. Fight to get closer to the basket. There was a great play that the Utah Jazz used to run where John Stockton would come across the ball would be on the strong side, let's say. John Stockton would come across the lane and screen for Karl Malone so Malone could get the ball in the low block and go to work. I'd love to see San Antonio, and they don't do that in the NBA anymore, but I'd love to see San Antonio run some sort of action that would free Wemby up closer to the basket, say 6 to 8 feet away, as opposed to like what we're seeing right now, 14 to 18 feet before he can catch the ball. He's slight of frame. He's playing against two very physical posts in both Robinson and, of course, Cat. And trying to create an advantage for him to get the ball closer, I think, would be huge. But then he's got to do something with it when he gets the ball, which he did during the regular season, but is somewhat abandoned during the postseason right now. So part of that's coaching, part of that's him and his mindset. So I think we've hit on it really, really well in terms of what we need to see.
Yep.
So now the question is, you're sticking with them.
I'll stick with the Spurs.
You're going to stick with the Spurs in 7, that they're going to find a way back. I don't count them out. It'll all hinge, like you have correctly stated, on Game 3. But I'm not counting them out either. This is a surprising team, and it's filled with so much talent and youthful enthusiasm that if they're able to break through and win Game 3, the Knicks have limitations. Like we were talking about, Bridges isn't going to go 7 for 8 every night. Cat's been very, very good. I think that can continue. Brunson can be better, for sure. But there's a couple of other players, and OG, of course, but there's a couple of other players that have, Shamet, he's playing better than he is, with all due respect to him. He's shooting almost 60% for 3 for the postseason. He has made himself a lot of money this year. Yeah. Deservedly so. Fantastic. He's just had a fantastic season in playoffs and been integral, and one of the primary reasons that the Knicks are even in the position they're at. So it's going to be a great Game 3 and a great great series the rest of the way. Even if, God forbid, there's a 4-game sweep for New York, it's still been a really great series.
So we talked about this on the Triple S this morning, and it's all over my Twitter timeline. Would you like to take a guess at how low, like the cheapest ticket for MSG is at Game 3 on Monday night?
I'm guessing $8,000.
Pretty close, $9,500.
95, yeah, not surprising. There was a great graphic this week about, at that time, and I think the Knicks tickets were $4,300.
Yep.
You could go to every remaining home game for the Yankees, the Mets, and I believe the Jets, and spend less than you'd pay for one seat to go to a Knicks game for the rest of the season.
That's
and
wild.
For the whole season for the NFL. Like, that's what you're dealing with.
Oh, the Jets stink. Now, would you like to take a guess at the lowest ticket price for Game 4? Potential series ender.
I'll go $7,500.
No. $13,827 is the cheapest ticket to get into Madison Square Garden for Game 4 currently.
I'll tell you what, there are absurdities in life right now. One of them would be going to Disneyland. You cannot believe how expensive it is for a family to go to Disneyland. But pro sports, what people will pay is just mind-boggling.
Yep.
And when you go to New York City, it's a very expensive city anyway, but it makes sense to me. Now, I'd really be curious, and maybe when we take a break right now, Josh, could you look up what it costs for San Antonio, what it would cost for in San Antonio for Game 5?
$1,844.
How much?
$1,844 is the cheapest.
Oh my God, it's a practically free.
Yeah, basically
in San Antonio. So that's great. Well, we're gonna have to take a break, one more final break right now, and we'll. Oh, we don't?
No, we're good. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're good. All right. Well, we can just continue on then down the road. I thought we had a break we had to take.
No, we're all good.
Here's my other question. Have the Spurs not figured it out, but have they demonstrated that that their big guards, athletic guards, have figured out how to fluster Jalen Brunson to the point where Brunson, do you think Brunson can have 35 on this Spurs team? Do you think he's able to get free at home and be able to do something like that?
I think so. I think there's going to be a defensive switch up from Sean Sweeney and Mitch Johnson. They're probably going to find a new way to defend, because I think if you're the Spurs, you'd rather get beat by Jalen Brunson in the first 3 quarters and then go back to what it was you were doing, like particularly in the first last night, in the fourth, trapping him in the half court. He almost got 2 backcourt violations from getting stuck in that corner, like on back-to-back possessions. They're guarding him very well. But if you can wait to exhaust your guards later into the game and then go, all right, De'Aaron Fox, Dylan Harper, Devin Vassell, you guys, like, you're on Brunson duty. Go stop him. And if we can trap him in a corner, this is when we'll feel more okay letting a guy like OG Anunoby or Mikal Bridges take shots, because anyone can take shots to the first 3 quarters. But when you get to the fourth quarter, you got to give it to a specific guy, especially if it's close.
I agree with you somewhat. I would layer in a couple of other thoughts. Number one, I like when the Spurs play Brunson straight up for most of the game. And I would say I would like to see that strategy employed over the 4 quarters, with rare exceptions where you would do a run and jump like they did at half court, a quick half court trap, but use it as a surprise as opposed to a strategy possession after possession. Playing them straight up is better, because then you do not have to give up those open corner threes like they've been giving up to Bridges in OG at crunch time. There was what was fascinating in Game 1 was Champagny. Remember, he had 15 or 16 in the first half.
Yep.
5 threes, wide open threes in the corner. Everybody's celebrating. My God, they figured New York out. You have to give Mike Brown and his staff an incredible amount of credit for the halftime adjustment they made in Game 1, which I think is the pivotal defensive strategy that had turned the tide in this series and allowed the Knicks to take Game 1 and take momentum into Game 2. If you watch the graphics of how they defended and took away the corner 3, all they did, and basketball is such a simple game, even as complicated as it appears to be, it's such a simple game. Instead of, and you appreciate this as a coach, Josh, instead of having your defender with 2 feet in the paint to defend against penetration, what they did is they spread it out so they only were touching the paint with 1 foot. And what that means, in trying to not be too much of a basketball nerd, which I totally am, but what that meant was you had a step and a half less to close out on the corner shooter on the penetrating kick. So Champagny didn't hit a shot in the second half because they were able to close out and take that easy 3-pointer away. The Spurs have to do the same thing.
Yeah, what it boils down to is they have to adjust. And Mike Brown has been killing Mitch Johnson at that, like, through the entirety of the thing. And you and I have been on this show before saying, man, maybe we're not a big fan of Mike Brown as a coach. I was wrong.
I was wrong.
Like,
I was wrong. He's been fabulous.
this is a guy from the Pop tree and the Steve Kerr tree. He's worked for both of those guys. He also went to a finals in 07, just to get the brakes beaten off of him as the head coach. But whatever, it was it was 07. Like, you weren't going to beat the Spurs, and that Cavs team sucked.
But once again, to your point earlier, Josh, and this I think is and the key. You don't talk just about experience on the playing side. You talk about it on the coaching side.
Mm-hmm.
Johnson's an emotional coach. I can relate to that for reasons I discuss at a later time. I was too when I look back on my coaching career, and I look at what I did well and what I didn't do well, one of the things is I was too emotional. Mm-hmm. Where Johnson, and this is why I think Sean Sweeney is going to be a great head coach. He's not nearly as emotional as Johnson. Johnson ends up being a cheerleader, and they also showed him up close ripping into his team in the third or fourth quarter as well.
Yep.
I think Johnson needs to be less emotional and more strategic moving forward.
Absolutely.
Regardless of this, we have a great Game 3 coming up on Monday night. I just hate the fact that we have to wait till Monday to watch it.
Patience is a virtue, Paul. I thought you'd know this by now.
You would think I would, but I don't. So we're going to wrap up right now. Before I go into my commentary on my son, Ben, next Saturday, June 13th, 7 p.m. down at Hall D, there's going to be Filipino Heritage Night between the Edmonton Stingers and the Scarborough Shooting Stars. Are celebrating the great Filipino community and their love for basketball. So that's a must watch. Song in the background is David's song, dedicated and written by my son Ben in his Worst Days Down band for David, who was tragically killed in a car accident just by walking across the street, and the driver making a terrible decision that took his life. My son Ben lost his life too in his battle against trauma and addiction 3 years ago. And of course, any family that's lost a brother or son knows the heartache that goes along with that. But one thing Ben represented, and why I do this every week, is Ben always emphasized and was known for, his legacy is in his kindness to those struggling in life. The message I always try to relay at this time every Saturday is, think the best of others. You can never be too kind. Random act of kindness work, and you never know what people are going through in their lives. So don't project onto them. Think in kind ways and act in kind ways. Thank you so much for joining us today on Hoop City with Paul Sir and Josh Fenwick. I hope you have a wonderful week. I'll be back in the studio with Josh next weekend. Looking forward to talking about the series. Maybe over next week. I hope not. But have a great week on and off the court. This is Hoop City with Paul Sir on your sports leader, Sports 1440.